Hello and welcome to the Football Philosophy channel. And I'll just start with the sad news of about Mr. Paolo Rossi, following pretty quickly on the sad news only a week or so back about Mr. Diego Maradona. But Paolo Rossi has sadly passed away, only aged 62 in this day and age. It's no age at all, 62 years of age. Paolo Rossi was a striker for Juventus in Italy. For any youngsters who might not really remember or know who he was, he won the World Cup with Italy in 1982. He was a striker. He was a Golden Boot winner. He played and scored a hat-trick in what was for me one of the most iconic games in World Cup history. Italy played Brazil. In that very same World Cup, the Brazil team were red-hot favourites to actually win the tournament. It was a really strong Brazil side with famous players in it, such as Zico, Socrates, and Falcao. As I say, Brazil were red-hot favourites. It was fascinating that he came back and went straight. There was a lot of discussion before that World Cup as to whether Paolo Rossi would actually be in the Italian squad. He'd been suspended for 2 years in Italy due to a betting scandal that he always maintained his innocence. So I will say he was allegedly involved in a betting scandal, although he was found guilty. So he was suspended for 2 years and literally came back and played 3 games for Juventus before the World Cup. And that brings me mind back to when we speak these days about players, without particularly, obviously I'm always speaking about United and I'm always reading things about United on Twitter, seeing what the manager says about United, and we're often hearing, this player's not played enough games, so he's rusty, or this player's played too many games. There's always some sort of excuse. This player's played too many games, so he's tired. But Paolo Rossi had literally played 3 games in 2. All right, they were in the last few weeks, but he'd only played 3 games in 2 years. Came back straight into the World Cup squad. As I say, there was a lot of discussion. People thought he might not even be selected, but he was selected in the World Cup squad, having only played 3 games, and ended up getting the Golden Boot. And he scored a hat-trick, as I say, in that fantastic game where they beat Brazil 3-2. And I remember it well, like it was yesterday. To be honest, I watched that game live, and he was a great player. So rest in peace, Mr. Paolo Rossi. Champions League this week. Obviously, we crashed out of it. Disaster the other night. I've calmed down a little bit since the other night, but I can't get over all these tactics the other night, playing too many forward players. If anybody saw my show yesterday, there's a description there or an explanation of how I think we should have approached the game. There was 2 or 3 people on Twitter have said they watched different games last night, and I think because they've been seeing what I've been saying, quite a few people saying that teams that they watched last night had far better shape about them. People behind the ball, Atletico Madrid were mentioned. They needed a point in their game, and they played with a lot of men behind the ball and ended up winning 2-0. I watched Inter Milan versus Shakhtar. There's people talking about that game. Shakhtar played with 11 men behind the ball most of the time, and when Shakhtar did have little spells, Inter Milan played with 10 behind the ball, and just Lukaku to hit with the ball at the top. Somebody's just been on Twitter now and saying to me, what's your point in that? Inter Milan finished bottom of the group, big deal. What's your point? But the point is, it's a cagey game. I don't care. We've finished 3rd in our group. They finished bottom of their group. We're in a tough group. They're in a tough group. They're in with Real Madrid and Borussia Mönchengladbach. It's not a great deal of difference for us whether we finish 3rd or 4th. A lot of people would rather not be in the Europa League. So the point I'm making is simply that. That's how the top teams play. They haven't had much worse results than us, but they got a 0-0 draw in a game where, okay, Inter Milan needed to win. Shakhtar needed to win, really, but I'll come to that in a minute. I'll come back to that game shortly. I just wanted to mention the game from the previous night, PSG, that was played yesterday. Neymar got a hat-trick, Mbappe scored 2, PSG won 5-1 against Basaksehir. That was in the delayed game that was delayed from the day before. It was abandoned because of some racist comments by the 4th official that day. So that brings me to, in fact, I'll go straight back to that game. I watched that game the other night. Group B it was. Real Madrid beat Borussia Mönchengladbach 2-0. It was 2-0 at half-time for Real Madrid. Real Madrid knew they needed to win to be guaranteed of qualifying. Benzema got both the goals. Karim Benzema, what a player he's been for Real Madrid, by the way, over the years. He got both the goals. It was 2-0 at half-time, and the way the group lay, it was fascinating. Inter Milan and Shakhtar both knew that they would qualify with a win. Shakhtar would have qualified with a win no matter what happened in Madrid. Shakhtar would have qualified. Inter Milan would have qualified with a win against Shakhtar, so long as that game in Madrid wasn't a draw. So long as it wasn't a draw, it didn't matter who won, but so long as it wasn't a draw. And with it being 2-0 for Real Madrid at half-time, it was fairly obvious, really, that Real Madrid were going to win the game. It's not often, I can't remember when that last happened, but it must be very rare that Real Madrid get claws back on their own turf from being 2-0 up at half-time. So I think you can safely say that in the dressing room in Milan at half-time, they were all, confident that Real Madrid were going to win that match. They didn't care who won it, so long as somebody did. So they knew that they just needed to win their own game to qualify, and they were playing against Shakhtar. Now Shakhtar, they're not a popular team. They're not a famous team over in England, Shakhtar. But in this group, they've beaten Real Madrid twice. They beat Real Madrid home and away, Shakhtar. So it was a proper tough game. And Shakhtar defended well. They had some decent spells. They grew into the game. This is what I was trying to explain about United. For the first hour, really, it was all Inter Milan apart from the odd breakaway for Shakhtar. But as they grew in confidence, Shakhtar actually had some really good passages of play in the last half hour. This is what I mean by getting a foothold in the game and growing in confidence. They played with men behind the ball, and they could easily have won that game in the end, despite the fact that Inter Milan had nearly all the possession for the first hour of the game. They had all the possession, Inter Milan, but only a couple of decent chances. Literally, two, maybe three decent chances, and that was it. I like the look. I can't remember his name, but the Shakhtar goalkeeper, by the way, looks colossal. He's only 19 years of age, and he's keeping an experienced keeper out. But he looks absolutely fantastic. But Shakhtar's team shape, every time Inter Milan got the ball, all sat back in their own half. This is what United should have done. People are saying to me, it's boring, it's not us, it's not Man United. We had two really tough games in which we needed 1 point. We should have been capable of getting that point no matter what shape we played, no matter how, I shouldn't say no matter what shape we played, because we played too many forwards, that's why we didn't get the point we needed. What I'm saying is, it shouldn't have mattered to the fans what shape we played, so long as we got the point that was necessary. So it was an absolute folly to play like we did. But enough of United. Back to this Shakhtar game. What I did find interesting, I've just said that Shakhtar did come strong in the last half hour, but Inter knew they needed to win. Shakhtar could still get through with a win as well, but Inter were at home, and they absolutely piled on the pressure in the last 7 or 8 minutes. They absolutely piled on the pressure, and there was about 7 minutes injury time played as well, and it was all Inter towards the end, but they couldn't get the goal that they needed. But this is what I wanted to mention. Shakhtar, who have beaten Real Madrid twice in that group, celebrated when the final whistle went. And obviously, I know we're Man United, but we're devastated being out of it and being in the Europa League. But I found it quite interesting that Shakhtar could have qualified by winning that game and yet celebrated finishing third, just because, as I say, they didn't manage to win it, but finished third and at least have stayed in Europe. They're in Europa League, and there was big celebrations, really. So beating Real Madrid home and away and then celebrating finishing third was pretty fascinating to me. In Group A, Bayern had already won the group. This is one of the games where the team needed a draw away from home. Atletico Madrid were in front of Salzburg on the night and just needed a draw, but they've gone there, defended well, and won 2-0. So Bayern and Atletico Madrid are through from that group. In Group C, City beat Marseille 3-0. Sergio Aguero, who's had quite an injury, quite a long injury really, was back and came off the bench and scored. They've said though that they don't really expect him to be fit to start the Manchester derby on Saturday. I really hope that they need to bring him on, because if they need to bring him on, it means that that we're at least in the game later on in the game. So I hope they have to bring Aguero on. If he doesn't start, sometimes it might be a smokescreen. Maybe they're saying he won't start. Maybe he does start. But as I say, City won 3-0 in Group C, and Porto were already through as well. So City and Porto from that group. In Group D last night, Liverpool drew 1-1 with Midtjylland. Probably a great night for Midtjylland. I haven't looked at Liverpool's lineup. I'm sure they made lots of changes. They'd already won the group. And Atalanta were another team who needed a result. They went to Amsterdam, needing to avoid defeat. Ajax needed to win in the Amsterdam Arena. Atalanta have won there 1-0. I haven't seen any of that game. I've not even heard anybody speak about it. But I'm pretty confident if I was to watch that game over, you'll find that Atalanta are playing with 11 men behind the ball. As I say, a draw would have done them, and sometimes it's the best way to win a game. I've just mentioned Atletico Madrid won 2-0. They only needed a draw. I'm sure they played defensively. Atalanta won 1-0. They only needed a draw. I'm pretty sure they probably played pretty defensively. So from that group, that was Liverpool and Atalanta. So I've got a list there of the teams that have qualified. Going through to the next round, obviously teams that have won the group cannot draw teams. In the next round, the last 16, you can't draw teams from your own country, and you can't draw a team that you've played against in your own group. But all the big guns are all through and have virtually all won the groups. The winning teams, the group winners, are Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Dortmund, Juventus and PSG. Juventus, by the way, the night before last, they went to Barcelona, the new camp, and won 3-0. They needed to win the group, and they won 3-0 in the new camp. I'd like to see that game really, and see what Barcelona played like, because that sounds like they might have approached the game like we did. But Juventus have won that group, but that was obviously a tough group. So that Barcelona will be a team that have come second in a group that obviously all the group winners will be hoping to avoid. All the group runners up are Atletico Madrid. Surely they're one to avoid. Borussia Mönchengladbach, Porto, Atalanta. I know they've given Liverpool a couple of decent games in the last couple of seasons. I think they've beaten them at least once, maybe twice. Sevilla. We know of old that I wouldn't really fancy drawing Sevilla if we were still in it. Lazio, Barcelona, and obviously Leipzig. They're all the runners up in the 8 groups. As I say, you can't draw teams from your own country. You can't. Well, all the English teams have all won the groups anyway, so they'll be drawing teams that have come second. If I was to look, all of these teams are going to be decent, but let's be honest, you do look at it and think, I'd rather draw them than them, or I'd rather draw these than them, or whatever. And I would have thought Porto and Borussia Mönchengladbach might be the 2 teams that might, you might fancy drawing over and above the likes of Barcelona, Leipzig, Atletico Madrid. So I think all the big teams will be hoping to draw Porto or Borussia Mönchengladbach. City were in the same group as Porto, so they can't draw Porto. So I'll have a guess at it straight away. I'll say Liverpool will get Porto, and I'll say City will get Borussia Mönchengladbach. The draw's on Monday, by the way. I'll be looking forward to that. Now that we're in the Europa League, I'm devastated we've dropped out of the Champions League. But now that we're in the Europa League, I hope we have a good go at it. I'd love us to win it. I don't think it's certainly not going to be easy finishing in the top 4 this season. I don't see Spurs going anywhere. Mourinho seems to have them proper ship shape. I don't see Spurs going anywhere. I don't see Liverpool going anywhere. I don't see Chelsea going anywhere. We're above City at the moment. If I had to put money on it, I'd assume City are going to finish above us. Top 4 is going to be hard work. But obviously we can do it, but I don't think we can afford to just dismiss the Europa League this season. I think we've got to really, really go for it. In the Europa League, when I say we've got to go for it, which we have, it's not going to be easy winning that either. Games tonight, Dundalk versus Arsenal. Arsenal have already won the group. I'm just running through the games with English teams in it. Leicester to play AEK Athens. They've already qualified, Leicester. And Spurs versus Antwerp. Spurs have already qualified. I can't remember now exactly. I think they need either a draw or a win, Spurs, to win the group. But they qualified anyway. So Arsenal, Leicester and Spurs are already through. Other teams that are through that'll be decent teams. Roma with Chris Smalling are playing for them. It'll be a decent side. Benfica, PSV Eindhoven and AC Milan, by the way, who seem to be resurgent, and they've got Ibrahimovic banging goals in for them, although I think he's just got an injury recently, but he has been banging goals in for them. And then obviously the teams that drop out, like we have, from the Champions League, that'll be half decent. I think Salzburg won't be easy. Ajax, Shakhtar Donetsk could be a dark horse. As I've said, they've just they drew 0-0 twice with Inter Milan in their group, and they beat Real Madrid twice. So I wouldn't really fancy playing Shakhtar home and away, if I'm dead honest. I have watched them more than once, by the way, and they look a proper decent side. Of interest, anything of interest tonight, if you want to watch a game tonight, in Group F, I think that's the most interesting one. I think both Napoli and Real Sociedad will be tough opponents if they get through, or whoever gets through. But it's an interesting group. Napoli play Real Sociedad tonight. And if Alkmaar are playing Rijeka from Croatia, if Alkmaar win, it doesn't matter what the result is between Napoli and Sociedad, if Alkmaar beat Rijeka, either Napoli or Sociedad will go out of that. So one of them will get through. If Alkmaar win, one of them won't. I might have a look at that Napoli Sociedad game myself tonight. The draw's coming up this coming Monday for both competitions. As I say, now that we're in it, I'd love us to go for it. The top four is far from guaranteed, so I'll look forward to that draw on Monday. That's about it for now, unless there's anybody live asking any questions.
There's quite a lot of questions about the current situation with Ollie and what you think's going to go on with Ollie. Manchester Red says Ollie's out of his depth. The team has great players. Pot would make our great players even better. Rob Garbutt, not convinced the grass is always greener with Poch. Let's get to the summer and reassess. Amateur hour to sack a manager mid-season. Manchester Red, Ollie's not good enough. We can't challenge for a title.
Can I just jump in there? Who said that about amateur hour?
Rob Garbutt.
Rob, I get where you're coming from, but obviously you've heard this phrase. You sometimes get a new manager bounce. Teams have done this to avoid relegation in the past, and it's worked on more than a couple of occasions. Teams that look nailed on to get relegated, they sack a manager. Doesn't always work, but it does work. Sometimes they get a new manager in, and a new manager swings it round. The players get a bounce, as they call it. If United were to get a new manager in the next week or few weeks, whatever, it could make that difference between qualifying for the Champions League, getting in the top four, and not getting in the top four. Obviously, if they do change the manager, we'll never know if we would have made it anyway. But obviously, we're up there at the moment. We're above City. If City beat us tomorrow, they leapfrog us. Sorry, on Saturday. If City beat us, they leapfrog us. But I'm not 100% convinced by your argument that it's amateur hour to sack your manager mid-season. I'm not 100% convinced by that.
Red Devil 20. Rick, I love you.
Thank you, Red Devil.
But question, if you wanted a good team shape and cagey games, why didn't you like Jose?
I wasn't. One of the big reasons I wasn't a fan of Jose. Look, I do have my favourite players. I'm going to sidetrack here into something else. I get accused sometimes of favouritism and an agenda. I don't get that word agenda, and maybe I have got an agenda. But my agenda is towards the players that I like, and I believe the players that I like are the best players. Now, Anthony Martial is one of our best players. I've got no doubt about it in my mind. We haven't got, again, the other night, we just lacklustre, and so often we struggle without Martial, and yet obviously we're not absolutely a great team like we used to be. So sometimes we struggle with Martial in the team, but I'm pretty sure we struggle badly 90% of the time if he's missing, as opposed to, I don't know, 20% of the time if he's playing. Anthony Martial's a vital part of our team. So that's the reason he's one of my favourites. Now, another one, I'm going to do a show later about the player ratings, and I'm going to mention Nemanja Matic. I've watched that game back, and anybody who's watched me regularly will know that I don't like doing player ratings straight after the game. It's difficult to remember exactly how everybody's played, and you need to study it. So I'm going to give you a clue as to what's coming up later. Nemanja Matic, for me, having watched it again and studied the game and studied his game closely, played really well the other night. He's the only player that I will say that about, and he will be the one who gets the highest marks when I do my player ratings. Now, people often say to me, oh, it's Matic again, or it's this player again, or it's that player again. I've got no ulterior motive. I've never met Nemanja Matic. I'm not his dad, as some people say. I'm not his brother. Nothing like that whatsoever. I've got no ulterior motive other than I want Manchester United to play well. And if everybody would have played like Nemanja Matic played the other night, we probably would have got the point that we needed. And I'll be doing a show later about that. So I've got no ulterior motives. I just want the best players, and I want the best for Manchester United, and I want the best players to play. Okay, some people might have different opinions. Now then, getting back to Jose Mourinho, the way he treated Anthony Martial and the lack of game time that he got, I was absolutely disgusted with him. I believe we'd have been a lot better during Jose Mourinho's tenure if Martial would have got more minutes. The number of times, the way he treated him when he signed Alexis Sanchez actually at a point where Martial was banging goals in. And I remember certain games. I remember the Chelsea game at Stamford Bridge where we were leading 2-1. With about 5 minutes to go. Martial had scored both the goals. He was on fire. He substituted him and we drew 2-2. Don't substitute your best player. Look, I'm not putting him. Nobody needs to say in the comments, don't compare Anthony Martial to Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm not comparing him as a player to those players. Those players are the best players that play for their clubs, the players that are most likely to score another goal and put them 3-1 up if they're leading 2-1, the players who are most likely to win free kicks, the players who are most likely to get hold of the ball and let the team come out and give the defenders a breather. They're the best players in those teams. I'll be amazed. I'd actually be amazed if not injured. I'll be amazed if Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo have ever been substituted with their team leading by 1 goal. Maybe if they're leading by 3 goals. And when Mourinho substituted, this is how much I watched him and how much I liked him, Martial, when he was playing even then. He substituted him against Chelsea at 2-1 up with 5 minutes to go and we drew 2-2. And he substituted him in a game at Old Trafford against Arsenal where we were leading 1-0 with he substituted him with 10 minutes to go at the most and we drew 1-1. I honestly believe we'd have won at least one of those 2 games if we'd have kept Anthony Martial on. You need your best players on the field, and Jose Mourinho, to me, didn't like Anthony Martial. That's one of the main reasons that I didn't like Jose Mourinho.
Samant Radgag, this is probably going to lead into your show later on today, but for the second goal, Matic was at fault, could have backtracked, but he didn't.
I've seen somebody's put a photograph on that. Yeah, I'll have another look at that, but I'm not convinced. He's running back into the box. We're playing with a back 5, don't forget, and. I mean, if that's your line of your back 5 and these are your midfield players, when you've got a back 5, if one of your back 5 goes missing because he's gone forward to try and win a ball, this is what happened to Luke Shaw. I'm pretty sure this is the second goal. You'll see that Luke Shaw is also only just getting back into position. But one of the reasons that you play with a back 5 is that if somebody goes forward, you've still got a back 4. And back 4 is what you normally play with. Obviously, look, when you play with a back four, a full-back might get forward. On the odd occasion, even a centre-back gets forward. So then you've only got three at the back, and that's when you can come unstuck or you can get in trouble. So if you play a back five and a man gets forward, you've still got a back four in position. So I think on that clip, if you watch that second goal again, I think you'll also see that Luke Shaw's only just getting back into position. I don't know where he'd been. I'd have to watch it again. I'm not criticising him, by the way. Whatever he did on the field, it might have been the right thing to go forward at that moment. Then you've got to get back. So you'll see Luke Shaw coming back into that picture as well. But Matic, usually when you're getting back into position, if you've got a back four in place and you've got a midfield, you come back in lines like this. And it's not only... There's more than one reason for that. It's a sickener when the ball comes in as it does and they score. But on another occasion, that ball might come in and get saved by the keeper, or it might get blocked by a defender, and it can bounce loose towards the edge of the box. If it bounces loose towards the edge of the box, you don't want their players having a free run onto that loose ball. This is what a lot of people don't grasp. When a goal goes in, they don't grasp that the players on the field don't know that that's going to end up in a goal. They don't know which player is going to end up on the end of that cross. When they're putting themselves in positions, they're putting themselves in positions to try to cover all eventualities. So if Matic would have dropped in line with the back four, because it was a back four at that point with Shaw missing, it would have been a back five, but there would have been nobody on the edge of the box. So on another day, that cross might not go to the far post. It might get blocked by a centre-back and fall on the edge of the box, and somebody might rifle it in from the edge of the box. So a midfield player's job, look, obviously, if there's only one defender back or two defenders and there's three strikers, he's got to get back as fast as he can and help his defenders. But in a position where you've got a whole back four in line across a box, you know, don't forget the cross goes beyond all the defenders, right to the back post. I don't think Matic from a central midfield position can be expected not only to get into the back four, but actually to the back post as well. I don't think you can expect that. I think it's a harsh criticism. And at the same time, as I'm trying to explain, you need somebody near the edge of the box. You don't know that ball's going to go there when it actually comes over. So he's doing his job. He's on the edge of the box. If it gets blocked, he's there to try and compete with players that are coming in.
It's a similar thing to assessing percentages at all times.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to assess the percentage in retrospect.
Of course it is. Great point. That's a great point. It's easy to look at the film and go, oh, he should have done this. Actually on the pitch and assessing the percentage chance of what's going to happen. Don't forget what a great ball that is, by the way. Right, it cuts everybody out and goes all the way to the back post. That's a fantastic point. I want to stress that. What you're thinking is you've seen that player score that goal, and I think you're thinking that Matic should think, oh, this is going to go all the way to him, all the way over there at the back post. I better go and get him. And I think it's a really harsh criticism. Just on that cross, by the way, I'm glad that it's led to this. This is a side issue. This is something else. When I mentioned my team selection that I would like to see play for that game in Leipzig, I like to have two wide players. I like to have two banks of four. Didn't mind it being a back five, but even if it's a back five, I've been speaking for ages now about getting players behind the ball, especially when you only need a draw. It's not as defensive as you think either. I explained this yesterday. You can break quickly from your own half and you can end up scoring goals just like Atlanta did last night, just like Atletico Madrid did last night. You know, they play defensively but still score goals. So I think that's how we should have gone about it. And when I mentioned this the other day, I mentioned that I'd just play Juan Mata wide on the right. He's the player who does the job the best. He's the player who's intelligent at it and stays in position or gets in position. When I say quickly, people might think that I'm saying he's like a racehorse or that he's like Marcus Rashford. I don't mean quickly in that respect. What I mean is, if the ball goes dead or if their goalkeeper gets the ball, if it goes out for a throw-in, you can get back easily. So it's about having a quick mind and knowing I'm better off being behind the ball and being in that position. So when I say quickly, I don't mean you're having a race at 100 mile an hour. I just mean doing it instantly, getting behind the ball and getting your correct team shape. The reason I'm mentioning that, because we're just speaking about the goals, and Angelino was mentioned. Can't remember obviously who mentioned it, but when I said I'd have Juan Mata in that position, somebody said, I don't fancy Juan Mata in that position marking that Angelino. That Angelino's rapid and he'll take Juan Mata to the cleaners, so to speak, or that was inferred. So on the night, Angelino scored one goal, he made the second goal. I'm not sure if he gets credited with the assist for the third goal because it took a deflection off another player, and I think it was one of his own players. But it was him that crossed it. So, you know, he more or less got an assist for the third goal with a cross. So he's got one goal and 2 assists. But we didn't play anybody against him. You know, nobody was playing as a wide right midfield player to stop him coming forward and to stop Wan-Bissaka having to come out of position to try and stop him. If you're playing a proper 4 across the middle, somebody wide right would be a direct competitor to Angelino. So Angelino didn't have anybody playing against him, scored 1 goal and made 2 goals. I just wish we would have played Juan Mata. You know, somebody playing against him is better than nobody playing against him. Sorry, go on.
So there's a few people asking the question about whether you'd go at the weekend against City with 5 at the back, and Ihsan Ahmed, would you approve of implementing a predominantly defensive system against City 5 at the back? And then also someone else asked, do you think we'd benefit if we went with that on a regular basis? Julian. Ricky, do you think if Ollie chooses to play a system consistently, we'll have a decent season, or a managerial change is needed?
I think I do think that we should try and play the same team on a regular basis, but really there's 2 teams, so it's not a lot of games, at all, where I wouldn't argue against playing with a back 5, and obviously the 2 teams are Liverpool and City. But if we do play with a back 5, we've still got to play with 4 in midfield. It defeats the object playing with a back 5 and only 2 midfield players. They get an overload in midfield, and as we saw the other night, I'm going to be mentioning on my show later, I heard, because I've watched it again and I've listened intently to what was being said, there was things that I missed watching it first, but I heard Glenn Hoddle saying on more than one occasion, I've had somebody else. When I mentioned Glenn Hoddle, I've had one person say to me, yeah, but what did Glenn Hoddle do? Look, at least he was an England manager. I do get that sometimes I say I don't care what he says and I don't care what he says. But when you've got an ex-England manager seeing what I'm seeing, you know, at least, it's sort of a string to me bow, if you like. I don't mind mentioning it. I know maybe I wouldn't agree with everything he says. But he is an ex-England manager. And during the game, on more than one occasion, he said United haven't got enough players in midfield, and he's absolutely bang on. Even if I don't agree with everything he says on this thing, he's absolutely bang on. We didn't have enough players in midfield. So if we do play 5 at the back, we've still got to play 4 in midfield, even though one of those 4, but only one, can be an attacking midfield player whose job it is to go and join in. I mean, there could be 2 wide players; they can get forward as well. But I'm talking if you play a back 5, it defeats the object if there's only 2 midfield players in front of them. You need 4 midfield players in front of them, just like you have in 4-4-2. So you've got a bank of 5 and a bank of 4 that move up and down the pitch together, and they move across together as the ball gets shifted from side to side. You need a bank of 5 and a bank of 4. No good if you're going to go with a bank of 5 and then only put 2 in midfield like they did the other night. It was embarrassing. So one of the 4 could be Bruno or could be Van der Beek, but the other 3 have got to be proper wide players or midfield players, wide players who do the job diligently. It's okay saying to Mason Greenwood or Marcus Rashford, you've got to get behind the ball and having to stress it to them and bang on it, but bang it into them. If you've got to do that, it's wrong. You need players who do it naturally, because they're going to slip up. They're not going to do it naturally. So to me, if you're going to play a 4 across the middle and you need it to be solid defensively, you need Juan Mata and Dan James on the flanks. Before anybody laughs, they both started against Chelsea. They're as big a team as all these other teams that we've played. We drew 0-0 with Chelsea. Do you know where I'm coming from? So you need players on the flanks who do the job diligently without having to be pressured into doing that job. That's the idea. And then 2 midfield players. Don't mind one of them being an attacking style player, but he's got to do his job in the middle of the field first.
Eunice Styles, love the show. City predictions, Rick.
I don't fancy us. I didn't fancy us against Leipzig. I always say this because there's a few shows. If I'm on the United stand and, you know, I've been on Sophie's show, the air dry treatment as well, and the people always love, you know, Sophie always says to me, what's the prediction for this weekend? Flex always asks me, what's the prediction, you know, for next week? I always say the team changes that much. I've said this a few times. There'd be probably a few people. How many people are watching? Can you tell?
100.
Right, okay. There's probably a few people watching who haven't heard me say this before. But when I was a young kid or a young man, you knew what the team was from week to week. You could name other people's teams. You know, when I was in the 70s, the great Leeds United team was Sprake, Reaney, Cooper, Bremner, Charlton, Hunter, Laurie McClark, Jones, Giles, Gray. That's one of our opponents, let alone our team. So you knew if they were all fit what the team would be from week to week. It was much easier in those days to say, I think we'll beat this team and I think we'll beat that team. It's almost impossible these days. I know what my favourite team is for United, and if I knew that team was going to be playing, I'd be happy to make a prediction. But I'm not happy making predictions when the team changes from week to week, the formation changes from week to week. Not just because the formation changes from week to week and the team changes from week to week. That doesn't help you because you've got no consistency. But purely and simply, really, because I don't know what the team's going to be. How can you say how they're going to go on if you don't know what the team's going to be?
Good question here from Darshan. Well, it's not a question, it's a point really. Watching your analysis made me realise how important Sadio Mane and Salah tracking back are to help Trent and Robbo. She's obviously a Liverpool fan, Darshan. And then Julian straight after. Could players like Rashford that aren't used to tracking back be coached and get used to it?
Yes, yeah, I would say they probably could, but it needs to be coached into him. The players that do it naturally. Dan James does that job naturally. There's no, I'm not sure that somebody who's being coached to do it will do it quite as well. You might have a player who's got more ability. Maybe faster, maybe fitter. Different things can come into it. So probably yes, but whether you get somebody to do, look at Ryan Giggs, look at David Beckham. Anybody who's old enough to remember them and watch them play, just natural wide midfield players, not wide attackers. As great as they were at breaking forward, and Beckham could cross it as good as anybody, and Giggs could beat people as good as anybody. When the opposition had the ball, they settled in, and we had 4 across the midfield. And as I've said 2 or 3 times, the midfield tripped off the tongue in those days. Beckham, Keane, Scholes and Giggs. And the other night it was just McTominay and Matic. It's nowhere near enough players, no matter what the standard of the players are. So whether somebody could be coached to play quite like Ryan Giggs or David Beckham, I'm not sure, to be honest. But they could certainly do it better. They could certainly do it better than what they're doing it at the moment.
Mr. Fister, Ricky, I know you like 4-4-2. Which 2 players would you use in central midfield? Would you leave Bruno or Donny out of the team because you'd want 2 of Matic, McTominay or Fred?
I wouldn't leave them out of the team, no, because they both can play at number 10. You don't have to have 2 proper strikers. I like referring to the 1999 team. Obviously, it was fantastic days. But a lot of people have Dwight York down as an out-and-out striker. He wasn't really an out-and-out striker. He was more of a number 10. Dwight York used to drop back into midfield when United were under pressure. We had 5 across the middle at times. And if he didn't quite drop, so you've got your back 4, you've got your midfield 4. If he didn't quite drop in between them, he would always drop so he was 5 or 10 yards in front of him. So if Keane or Scholes made an interception, they could immediately give it to Dwight York's feet. He would only be 5 or 10 yards away. So if we were under pressure, if the opposition have got the ball, because obviously even that team came under pressure at times, and they're passing the ball around the edge of our box. If you look at any old clips, you'll see that Dwight York appears probably 10 yards or 15 yards outside our penalty area. He's not standing up front waiting for us to get it and kick it up. So Andy Cole would stay up front. Dwight York used to drop in, so he was a number 10. If Teddy played, Teddy was a number 10. He'd drop in looking for the ball and try and find pockets of space. So that what was I forgot what the question was now. So about who'd play. So I've got no problem with Bruno or Van der Beek playing at number 10. No problem whatsoever. But you can't play somebody in a number 10 role because your number 10 is still not amongst your midfield four. It still doesn't leave you with enough players in midfield. So your number 10 is your support striker, if you like. So I've got no problem with either Marshall or even Cavani playing at 9 and either Bruno or Van der Beek playing at 10 and then 4 midfield players. No problem whatsoever with that. Should we do one more?
Do one more, yeah.
We'll do one more. So I don't know who it's going to be. I hope nobody's too disappointed.
No.
My able assistant is just having a look now for the next question. Some of them disappear quickly off the screen, by the way. I'm sorry if you put a question up that is not read out. I can't see it. I've not got a computer.
It is a very general one to finish footballing. Ricky, which United side is the best ever according to you?
I think it's got to be the treble team, hasn't it, really? The treble, they won the treble, plus they won the Premier League 3 times on the bounce. A little bit of history for anyone who doesn't know it. I'm sure there'll be quite a few people watching who don't know it. But nobody in the history of English football, it's happened a lot in foreign nations, a hell of a lot. Sometimes teams win it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, even 10 times on the bounce. But it's never been won more than 3 times on the bounce. Not just the Premier League, but the actual top league. Believe it or believe it not, nearly 100 years ago, Huddersfield Town were a top team. Huddersfield Town have won it 3 times on the bounce. Arsenal have won it 3 times on the bounce. Liverpool have won it 3 times on the bounce. And Man United have won it 3 times on the bounce twice. So they did it twice under Fergie. They're the only team that have done it twice. Nobody's won it more than 3 times on the bounce. That treble team won the treble, plus won the league 3 times on the bounce. For me, that qualifies them as the best team ever. Will that do?
I think that'll do, yeah.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you. And as I say, I'll be back later today with rating the ratings. As I've said, I need to watch it twice, so it's a little bit later than everybody else who does ratings. I've only managed to watch it again late last night, having watched it the night before live. So I'll be doing the rating the ratings later. Back tomorrow with team news after the press conference, and obviously the predicted team news once I've heard who's fit or not fit, as the case may be. If you've enjoyed that little show, please subscribe. Please tell all your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, don't tell anyone. Keep stum.